economies are increasingly shaped by the digital world. Global hyperconnectivity, artificial intelligence, rapidly evolving labour markets. How should governments embrace digitalization and AI for good? Adapt institutions for a digital infrastructure? And ensure a digital economy works for all of their people? Welcome to the New Economy Forum. Strategies for the Future, Digitalization of the Economy and AI.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we're here to talk about how digitalization and artificial intelligence are shaping economies. And this isn't just a tech story. It's a story about how governments adapt, how they reinvent themselves to serve citizens better, faster, and more effectively. So I'm delighted. I'm Dabla-Norris. I'm a Deputy Director in the Fiscal Affairs Department of the IMF. And I'm absolutely delighted to have with me three leaders who are confronting the opportunities and challenges that these technologies pose head-on. So to my left, I have Minister Pyrkakis, who's the Minister of Finance from Greece and the former Minister of the Digital Economy in Greece. To his left, we have Minister Kamal Shehadi, who's the Minister of Finance, the Minister of AI and Digital Transformation from Lebanon. And to his left is Minister Jurgen, who's the Minister of Finance from Estonia. And each of these countries has taken a very distinctive path on this journey. Greece, modernizing government, building trust. Lebanon, considering how to turn digital reform into a national strategy for resilience and development. Estonia, showing the world what a digital state can look like long before many of us were there. So together, these stories really span 3 decades of digital experimentation, from pioneering e-governance to thinking about how to deploy new technologies in order to serve their people better. So let's begin the session by looking back to understand how these countries' journeys have evolved. So I'm going to start with Minister Pyrkakis. Greece has undertaken major reforms in digitalization, including gov.gr, the integrated platform for government services that was launched under your leadership when you were a digital minister, when you served. So what motivated this transformation? And how do these efforts affect public sector performance?
First of all, I think that the motive was clear. The motive was to offer better services to citizens and corporations. It started from an observation, which more or less is the fact that governments are not designed. I would actually say that governments have occurred to a very large extent, because they are the outcome of a sum of an accumulation of decentralized choices by citizens. So if you end up looking at how governments serve citizens and corporations throughout the world, you will basically end up with a suboptimal result. The number of steps it's one of those services that you interact with your government entails can be many. There can be more than 10 on certain occasions if your government is bureaucratic. In Estonia, everything apart from 3 things happened digitally. If I'm not mistaken, is getting married, getting divorced, and buying a house. In the Greek case, when we started, everything was paper-based, and it more or less required you to visit numerous public services. So the challenge was huge. We started integrating service design thinking in the way our government works. What is service design thinking? If I may say it in one phrase, it's not about technology. It's about thinking in terms of how to properly design services. Technology comes later, but you need to understand it. So when you're designing policy, apart from having an economist in the room and a lawyer in the room, you should ideally have someone who understands technology in the room too. And this was very vivid during COVID-19 when we designed the vaccination platform for citizens in Greece. Everything worked neatly exactly because we integrated this design thinking throughout our policy design process. And gov.gr now has more than 2,200 digital public services. In a recent poll that I saw, Greek citizens were asked, what's the most popular reform in the history of your country. 89% replied the establishment of the national health system. 88% replied gov.gr. So this by itself, especially when our government is in office. So this by itself manifests the fact that this is a very popular policy. We have done significant work. We have not done everything yet. We need to continue in this direction. Simplifying processes, designing processes, offering better services to citizens. The end result, I would say, just speaking again about Estonia, a country which I deeply admire, the idea, Estonia is the compass. But each country should develop its own map getting there vis-a-vis public services. Right now, the development of the digital ministry has been very helpful. The nitty-gritty, of course, is very important. You need to get it right with regards to what such a ministry does. Many countries have digital ministries. I would argue the wrong question is, if I may say something which wouldn't necessarily sound politically correct. In my view, the absolutely wrong question is to say, what can we do about AI? What can we do about blockchain? This is dead wrong. What you should be thinking is, what should I be doing for my citizens? How do I serve my citizens better in this specific problem that they're facing? And the technology comes later. It can be AI. It can be something very simple. It can be a simple SMS. It can be anything. But what should be driving the process of government change should be the citizens' needs, not the technology.
Can you give me one example? Can you give us one example, one specific example of where this made a huge difference?
Vaccinations was one of the cases.
Yeah.
And I can give you one example with regards to how technology is not the mission-critical element of the story, but managerial, public management thinking and design thinking. Again, from COVID-19. In the first lockdown, we integrated the service. We were seeing what other countries were doing, which were entering full lockdown mode. And other European countries were selecting, writing a single piece of paper saying that I'm exiting my home, my name is such, and I'm going there. And they were writing it on a piece of paper and giving it to the state officials who might control mobility in the streets. So when Prime Minister Mitsotakis saw this, he called me and my team and said, can we integrate something digital, because I hate wasting tons of paper while doing this. It took us a couple of hours and we had a very simple idea. The idea was, use a simple SMS which simply bounces back the content of what you sent to a specific number, and then use this as a timestamp to basically control what is happening on the ground. Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft, writes in his book that this is one of the most interesting behavioral economics exercises that he saw during COVID-19. This is one such case. The second case, again, during COVID, we had to design the vaccination system, if I remember correctly, in 8 weeks. So those of you in the room who have done digital procurement understand that procuring something, designing something, delivering something, and checking something in 8 weeks is the definition of a nightmare. We did that, but in this discussion, we were receiving feedback from technology groups saying, this solution is good, the other solution is good. If I may say, we use simple Excel sheets. That's why I'm saying that the technology is not critical. The design process is absolutely critical. And in every digital service integrated in gov.gr, thousands of physical visits in public services became digital. And thus, we were avoiding those interactions which were not necessary on behalf of citizens. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign of eliminating excess administrative burdens. It can be a boost to your GDP. We need to do that in Europe. We certainly need to do that within the member states of the European Union. We certainly need to do that between the member states of the European Union. But it can catalyze growth, and as you suggested in your question, it can also catalyze trust. And I think this is very important, because at the end of the day, regardless of politics, regardless of anything else, what citizens expect from us is not strategy per se, it's delivery.
It's delivery.
Strategy is delivery.
Exactly. No, so this is fascinating, and we move now to Lebanon. And Lebanon is pursuing a digital transformation agenda amid significant economic challenges. So against this backdrop, you've been appointed the country's first Minister of State for Information Technology and Artificial Intelligence. What are the key priorities of your ministry? And you've also said that digital reform is a necessity, not a luxury for Lebanon. Why do you see it being so essential at this moment for your country?
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a necessity because it's a question of survival. I face 5 major pain points. The first one, the country has been devastated by war. We're in the process of rebuilding the country and the republic. Number 2, there's a very strict budget constraint. We cannot afford to rebuild the traditional way. Number 3, there's a huge history, legacy of corruption, which has to be attended to. Number 4, services are suboptimal. I'm being very diplomatic. You wait weeks to get your service. You have to wait in line. You drive for hours. You go from one department, one authority to the other. But 5, most of all, that's my long-term goal to address, our services, our public administration has been developed from the top down with a view of what is good for the state, rather than focusing on what are the services that we have an obligation to deliver. And so to address these 5 points, I think technology is part of the answer. Part of the answer is also redesigning these services, rethinking what are the services that we have to deliver and who delivers them, but how you do it. In a way, Lebanon is going through what I would call a perfect storm. And I don't see many other options. And because of the digital constraint, of the budget constraint, because of the conditions that we face, but also because of the strength that this economy has, one, a private sector that is bar none, one of the best in the region. We have an academic sector that is also one of the best in the region. And these two, the private sector and academia in Lebanon, have been at the forefront of technology. They've been at the forefront of adopting digital. And so I look at these two very vibrant parts of the economy, and I look at the public sector, and I look at the rest of the economy as a whole, and I see that there's something that needs to happen to basically catch up. And so the mission that this ministry has set for itself, we've adopted a strategy we call LEAP, and the objective is to leapfrog. And that's something you're going to hear from many other people. But we're in a situation where, because we're rebuilding from scratch, we have no other option but to jump to the latest technology, not for the sake of the technology, but as Minister Kyriakos just said, it is to deliver better services to address all the pain points that I mentioned. Having said that, there's going to be some breakage. We have some sacred cows we have to go after. There are some institutional problems that we have to unlock one way or the other. And that's really the mission that we've set for this ministry. That's the strategy, and it builds on using the strength, the private sector, the diaspora, an incredible source of support for the Lebanese economy, and the latest technology, and thinking creatively about solving these problems.
And I'm going to go back to you, Minister Kyriakis, for one thing, because when you set out the whole digital agenda, you did realize it was going to have unintended effects, unintended positive effects when it came to tax administration, when it came to sort of broader service delivery. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit more from that perspective, how things took off during the pandemic and went in directions you hadn't quite envisaged.
Well, the digitization of the tax authority in Greece, and we have the governor of the tax authority here with us in Greece, which is a success story by itself. But the digitization of the tax authority took place a little bit before because it was part of the conditionality of the IMF programs. And it was the same story, the same case with the digital prescription system, which we also had. But the focus at that point, by definition, because of the nature of the problem, was to look a lot at our fiscal situation, at our finances. The service design thinking came later. And it came before us winning the 2019 election. We spent a whole year looking at what other countries had done, looking at the Estonian model, looking at countries as diverse as Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, Canada, and trying to learn from each and every one of them with a more acute focus on the UK, because they had established gov.uk, which was relevant for us. But in the process, as we were defining our policy, building up the ministry, recruiting talent, delivering quick projects, thinking about what we could do medium run and short run, extending existing projects like the one that you mentioned in the tax authority, we realized that there was a very positive feedback loop taking place, as you suggest. And if you look at the current fiscal surplus, the current fiscal position in Greece, it is a function of good policy decisions. Connecting simple POS machines with the Greek SMEs enabled us to be able to capture tax evasion. What was the headline 10 years ago? That tax evasion is prevalent in Greece. What is the headline now? That Greece has generated fiscal surpluses, it has managed to capture a big part of this tax evasion, and its debt is rapidly de-escalating. So all of those things taken together generate a positive force. And this is why this policy is extremely beneficial if you get it right, if you're not technology-centric. You need to be human-centric in this analysis.
Maybe I'll turn now to Minister Ligi, because Estonia has been mentioned many times in this conversation already, and has been recognized globally for its digital leadership. Looking back to the early 1990s, the country underwent a profound economic and institutional transformation. How did Estonia turn that moment of economic transformation into an opportunity to leapfrog? Mr. Shehadi talked about leapfrogging. So it would be very interesting to hear your experience from Estonia's perspective, how you managed to do this.
Well, I believe, unlike Lebanon, we didn't have even scratch. We had Soviet system and had to build a free world on it, or nothing actually. And the legend said as well that we didn't have money to build old-fashioned bureaucracy. I don't know the calculations, but by now it's estimated that we saved 2% of GDP for the government, thanks to the digitalization. First thing I believe, how is still leadership and mindset, not technology. We made some strategic choices thanks to certain people whom I can name even, and we didn't just digitalize the old bureaucracy. We changed the way governments work. Of course, building trust is a constant challenge here, and it's still everyday problem because we are finding new ideas how to make things more effectively and meet resistance in the society, which is mainly populistic, but still it exists. We built it effectively in the way that people understand that it's easier, it's faster to have digitalized country. And by now, talking about events, examples, then we are even voting digitally. Our local elections are just happening now, and most people do it digitally. We have 100% actually of public service digitalized, and we declare taxes within a couple of minutes digitally. Everything has changed. Of course, to make trust, you have to have good rules, transparency, and also data protection. For example, people can track who has used data about them. They can check. Then, of course, we have built technical side. We have every Estonian has every citizen, I should say, has digital ID, and we have the platform called X-Road. We have been introducing it to many countries, but we are building on it. Not only state but also economy. Businesses can use it just like the government, and it's has helped IT industry a lot. We have IT companies give 88% of GDP, which is more than the car industry in Germany, for example. I just heard this example and compared. They have 7, we have 8, but not cars. And of course, it's people. And to educate, to build confidence. And when we started, we didn't have money to buy computers ourselves, but we equipped our schools and libraries with the computers. We have, and it's a little bit similar at the moment when AI is coming. We have a strategy for this as well, and we hope to be strong in this field as well.
So, so in your case, was it the government driving the transformation and the private sector caught up?
Yeah. I think so, yes, because the directions and the platform should be provided somewhere to make changes happen quickly and to unify all these processes. But in general, of course, government shows only the directions, set standards. Most of the work, of course, later developments are made by private sector, not by ministers somewhere.
Was that a similar in the case?
Historically, the private sector did most of the innovation in our case. But in this process of catalyzing government change, the work started top-down. We tried to attract talent throughout the public sector. I mean, part of what we needed to do, we basically created the strongest digital ministry in Europe in terms of capacities. And the way this worked was, we got elected on a Sunday. The Prime Minister was sworn in on a Monday. And then many people slept on Monday night as employees of the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Labour, and woke up on Tuesday morning as employees of the new Ministry of Digital. And it was the only way this could have worked, while endowing this new institution with a couple of core capacities. The number one of those capacities was the philosophy of X-Road, in the Estonian case. But it basically meant that the minister, the head of this organization, had the capacity to interoperate any data set with any other data set. And this is important because you're allowed then to redesign public services. In any event that you interact with your government, let's say you renew your driver's license, your child goes to kindergarten, there are steps that this event entails. The only way you can change that, simplify that, make your government more efficient, the only way this can work is if you change both the books of law and the screens of code. And in this regard, this is what we're attempting to do. To the extent that we have done it, this is one of the most popular things any government in Greece has ever done. To the extent that we have not done it, we're receiving more push on behalf of citizens to do it faster, quicker. And there were certain things which we could do top-down, quickly. I mean, one of the best things I was hearing back then from Greek banks, for instance, was we're mimicking what the Greek government is doing. And this was shocking historically, I mean, given what we experienced before. But now we need to catch up on certain things. We're very grateful for the presence of the European RRF funding, because with this we managed to fund our whole digital ambition in every policy area of the government. Be that the digitization of customs, be that the digitization of the health system. Lots of it is the digitization of paper, believe it or not, because if you look at the paper records that we have in health, in the cadastre, in any process of the government, you cannot create large pools of data without digitizing the data that the government already has. And this is the necessary condition to transition to the next phase of AI, because you need big data pools, you need interoperability between those data pools, and then on top of this you can create your own LLMs, you can create your own policy analysis, but you need to create the infrastructure, and the infrastructure was not there, simply put.
I think that's very well said, and this kind of leads me to my question to Minister Shehadi. So how are you how are you thinking about private sector involvement in sort of your transformational journey?
So look, it starts by defining what the role of the government in general is in this situation. And we're focusing on a number of things. Number one, making sure that we have the legal and regulatory foundation and building the institutions that are needed to move the country forward with this along those tracks, including having the digital capabilities under one roof. So there's a draft law and now in Parliament that's passed all the committees to establish a digital agency. In addition to the ministry here, of course, they work together. The digital agency is the executive arm that will design these different solutions. We are focusing on building the digital infrastructure or the national digital infrastructure that links the different parts of the government together. The centerpiece of that is a digital ID. Digital ID that the minister from Estonia mentioned is probably the single most important component of any digital suite of services. That is going to be tendered in the next few weeks. There will be more on that, and it will be delivered through a public-private partnership, simply because we do have a budget constraint, and instead of waiting for the Ministry of Finance to find the resources, It's through a partnership that it is developed in the private sector that's selected. The private company will be delivering the solution and will get a return over time, over the 5 or 7 or 10 years of the contract. We're also focusing on building the data sets. As the Minister Kyriakos said, you need the data. And the data in any country typically exists in silos. So you have to get...
Somehow find a way to...
Yeah. So what we're starting with is saying, look, you start building your data set. These are your toys. You play with them. You keep them. On the other hand, there's a system to interoperate, to exchange the data. Now, you still own the data, but you hold it in trust. That's the difference here. Rather than you own the data, which is the mentality of most bureaucrats who control data, you hold it in trust. You hold it in trust to better serve people. So in addition to the data sets, we're focusing on a few services that can show citizens how important it is to digitalize these services. And once we show that, we get momentum to get over the corruption, over the vested interest. You just have to imagine the vested interests are well organized, they're powerful, and it's part of the landscape. You cannot avoid them. And so you need to gather momentum by showing how things can be much better. We're also focusing on talent. The talent development is probably the single most important feature of this. We have it as an objective to triple the number of graduates in technology and AI, so we're working with universities, working with the Minister of Education to introduce AI and technology. And I'd say AI hesitatingly, because AI today is the leading technology. It's going to be something else later on. It's going to be generalized AI. It'll be super AI and whatever, super intelligent AI. The idea is to transform, empower the talent. And one thing to bear in mind, do not leave anyone behind, regardless of gender, of geography, and age. Ageism is a serious problem with digitization. You cannot leave people who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and 60s not think about how you reskill and upskill. And finally, we're focusing on finding the developing the financing for the tech industry. So we just launched 2 days ago the first Lebanese angel investor network. These networks existed until the financial crisis in 2020. Since then, there has been no angel investor networks. So we're re-energizing that, also including the diaspora. So we're built, and the ministry is not part of it. We convened, we brought them together. We had to bang some heads because a lot of egos there, but now it's working. And we have a network of networks. And finally, working on late-stage financing. We have incredible talent in Lebanon that immediately after they develop a product, they move to Dubai or Riyadh. That's where the financing is. The whole world is going to Riyadh and Abu Dhabi to look for financing, and Lebanese companies are no different. So what we're also doing is thinking of establishing partnerships. I just came back from the UAE. That I lived there for 15 years, so I have the connections with the companies that are doing this. We're proposing integrating the Lebanese tech industry with a regional focus, because AI is not a national industry. And just like we thought about integration in manufacturing and in commerce, today in the new economy, we have to think about the right framework to integrate the tech industry and the digital economy. And that starts with aligning your privacy policy and legislation, your cybersecurity policy and regulations. Once you have these tools in place, you have the level of confidence that allows hospitals in one country to cooperate with another. You have the confidence level to exchange data, not just within a country, but with other countries. And that is intended to better serve people, deliver better healthcare, better services, on and on. That's what we're focusing on.
And so this is sort of the linchpin of LEAP. This is what LEAP is going to try.
Absolutely.
And what is the time horizon that you have in mind? And
it's, look, for a government that has another 6 months, or actually a little more than that, 9 months left, our time horizon is a 5-year strategy. We cannot do it in less than that, and without having an ambition that's high enough. I don't think it's worth it. You won't get people motivated. So when you set an example like 5 years to have 80% of government services digitalized and cloud-based, that I think is something you cannot accomplish in 1 or 2 years. But in 5 years, in a 5-year horizon, using the talent that we have, absolutely, I think it's doable.
Mr. Minister Pirakakis, I mean, what has your experience been in terms of how long can it take, or does it? COVID was a special event, and that sort of precipitated things.
COVID was a special event in terms of two things, I would say. The first one was budget for us, because it enabled the European Union to develop the RRF, and thus we had the capability to finance the whole program, because when we were doing the gap analysis of all the systems that we needed, what was necessary was much more than what we had in place at that moment, budget-wise. And the second change that COVID brought was an acceleration in the demand parameters, because before that it was a nice-to-have element, a state that works better and functions better. But during lockdown, it becomes a necessity to have a continuation of government services in times of hardship. But having said this, I love Tony Blair's book. I read it recently about public management. And within that book, even though Tony Blair was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom some years before, I think he fully grasps the meaning of digital policy in the following sense. What he says in the book is, there are certain reforms that you need to do, the difficult things you need to do at the beginning. There's consensus on that. Any policymaker knows that you typically do the most difficult reforms at the beginning of your tenure, ideally in the first 3 months, the first 100 days. But what he says is that those reforms will take, like seeds, some time for the tree to flourish, but certain things you can do quickly, and those are the digital things. And they can be immensely popular because they cut red tape and they eliminate waste from government. It's something which the vast majority of citizens, regardless of the political flavor of their choices, will adhere to. They will embrace it. And this was our experience in Greece. This is certainly something that we plan to continue. And it's a sticky policy. Right now, gov.gr is extremely popular, regardless of political choice.
So that's an important lesson, I think, for Lebanon as well, that once you get those easy wins, it's easier to get more and more buy-in from the part of the citizens as well.
Absolutely. That's what I meant by saying to develop this momentum for change. Now, we do have a peculiar form of government. Effectively, and I say that with, again, some caution, we have a federation of ministries because of our constitution. And so my focus has been, rather than doing what you did in Greece, where you have the prime minister can drive this reform, we need all 24 ministers to be on board, because you cannot impose anything on a minister. So you use the example. So rather than relying on the kind of the political mandate that a prime minister has, I'm relying on this, probably the strongest driver of human behavior, which is envy. So you do something right, people want to imitate. Really, it is important. I mean, I say that and I mean it. You show success in one place and people want to replicate that. And I'm probably the most fortunate here, because I think I have the best colleagues
to imitate.
With all due respect to your colleagues, I think we have the finest group of ministers to work with, and we're all aligned on this goal. We have a mandate to set the country on the right track, and we have 3 things to look at. Some reforms we want to accomplish before the end of our mandate. Second, there are reforms we have to put on the right track. And 3, there are reforms that we have to seed. Just like you said, you plant it. And we know we will not necessarily be there to water it all along the way and to see it grow, but we have to plant it. And if we do things right, the momentum will continue with the reforms.
So talking about imitation, Minister Ligi...
He's going to start charging us.
He's going to start charging everyone. So Estonia is already a global leader. You know, Estonia comes up, the name comes up when it comes to digital innovation, e-governance. The question is, how do you stay ahead? The technology is moving very rapidly, and as it evolves, I mean, what are the biggest sort of challenges that you see in integrating AI into Estonia's digital infrastructure and public sector systems?
Well, there are challenges, permanent challenges, and I maybe did mention, but one of the challenges after having built e-government was the I think, the world's first cyber war against the country, 2007, organized by Russia. Since then, we understand how important is data protection, how important is security in those areas. But a challenge is, for example, maybe the first one is the quality of data. I don't think we have been very good in the past, so it's constant work. It's of course people, how to find people capable of be good specialists, and of course how to build awareness and confidence in others, how to use the knowledge. And of course, since the challenge for finance minister is always money, the demand was for the next budget was, I can't compare with the sum we were able to give with what was asked. And of course, all the time is a question about the competence of institutions. How can they interoperate, and how to bring everyone to the same level and confidence. So it is permanent work, and then the AI is a new direction here. Estonia has some success already. A fact is that our digital innovation hub has been recognized the most successful one in Europe, recently having collected some 62 million for companies already. Thank you.
Well, congratulations on that. And so, Minister Pirkakis, looking ahead, how do you see frontier technologies such as, I mean, you said that, that it's not the technology that matters, it's other things that are as important, but that said, how do you see artificial intelligence shaping Greece's digital economy, boosting productivity, strengthening competitiveness?
I mean, overall, this is connected to your previous question on Estonia, and I think that countries like Estonia will be very successful in this endeavor, exactly because they're not complacent. So complacency will kill you, basically, in this debate. And if you feel that you're doing well, you're not doing well enough. The question is about continuously improving yourself. And all of the topics that we discussed so far are topics with regards to government efficiency, which we should have solved for 10 or 15 years ago, at the time frame when they did it. But most of us still have trouble doing that. I mean, if you compare technological innovation in Silicon Valley and technological integration in the federal government of the United States, you will find a deviation between the two. And that is the case in many parts of the world. The debate that we're having about technology is not a debate about technological innovation in terms of product. It's about technological innovation in terms of process adoption. It's process innovation. And there, it's management innovation. It's exactly what we should be doing, each and every one of us. In this regard, your question, in a sense, is what keeps us up at night, what keeps me up at night. Because the rate of change is, by definition, exponential. It has always been exponential. It's just that the curve of the exponential element is even steeper right now. It's even more quick. Classical technological innovation in my generation, when I was a student here, I mean, we lived through the transition from Blockbuster to Netflix.
Yes, we did.
So this took what, 15 years, 10 years? The transition happening now by OpenAI, by LLMs, by artificial intelligence, it was in the months. It's going to be in the weeks. So you have technology behaving exponentially, you have us thinking linearly, and you have political systems reacting sublinearly. Because we're trying to solve the problems of yesterday. We have a series of outstanding problems which have accumulated for decades, and they dominate public discourse in every country. So on the one hand, you need to solve for this. But on the other hand, you need to be non-complacent and anticipatory of all the emerging problems which are the unknown unknowns of tomorrow. And in this regard, every policy area will need to adapt. They will need to adapt to technology. Pension policy, economic policy, fiscal policy, health policy, you name it. Education policy. You have to design an educational system for 5-year-olds and 4-year-olds entering public schools, and imagine the world where they will graduate when they will be 18. And how can you do that when life expectancy is increasing fast and technology is moving even quicker? I'm repeating a question to your question, but the only answer here is tautological. You need to adapt resilience, flexibility, and you pretty much need to understand that all the traditionalist type of thinking needs to get out of the room. And we need to be very quick. Even though political systems have institutional software of the previous century, this needs to adapt too. We need to move fast, basically.
As fast as the technology?
As fast as the technology shall be the goal, but generally speaking, as fast as we can, I would say, is the realistic
Which is the
answer.
aspiration. It's an excellent aspiration to be having.
Given the status quo bias that you can see in many parts of the world, yes.
And do you see this? Do you see this technology having a massive impact in terms of productivity and competitiveness in Greece?
I can see it having a massive impact if we can get the managerial practices of technology integration right, which we will. I firmly believe we will. We want to do this, we want to deliver this. We have proven the case, and we have fundamentally proven the fact that this is popular, which is very important in a democracy. You know, you build one thing after another, you realize that if you do not get it right, the failure will be significant. So by getting one thing after another right and making it popular, acceptable by citizens, making it embraced by citizens, then in reality it can be further integrated by the private sector, it can be further integrated by the education system, by families, and this is what will increase productivity at the end of the day. But it's a process, and this process is long. You need to do many, many things at once.
So the adoption aspect of it is really what Europe...
That's our job.
That's your job.
That's why I said strategy is delivery. Because at the end of the day, especially with regards to politicians, especially the debates that Jurgen and I are having in Europe, I mean, there's lots of vocabulary. The question is, can you do delivery? We have been speaking about many things in Europe for decades. We need to deliver those things quickly, together with all the new policy changes that we need to deliver as well.
On that note, I mean, thank you all. What a rich discussion in terms of how technology has shaped, will shape, could shape your economies. We've heard about bold reforms that have taken place 20 years, 30 years ago, and very recent ones that are ongoing. So we've also talked about some of the challenges that come with these technologies. We've talked about building trust. We've talked about cybersecurity risks. And there's a whole host of considerations that come into play. So I'd like to end by asking each one of you for about 2 minutes, a minute or two of reflection. So imagine we're here again, 5 years down the line, and I've invited you to be in this panel again. So what would, in your mind, success look like for your country's digital transformation in AI? What do you think of success? We'll start with Minister Ligi.
It's very hard for me to answer to this question because there are specialists who control it. But my first instinct is how can we control the ethical problems, and do all countries do it in the same way? For me, this is number one. The next one, of course, is people, how to build confidence, how to educate people. We have our own strategies for that and our own targets, for example, to cut bureaucracy by 70% by that time, within 5 years and so on. But really to make forecasts, I think it's a dangerous issue as well. So the ethical and all the security issues have to be solved radically before we change completely.
Okay, Mr. Shehadi.
I think the French have a saying, gouverner c'est prévoir. To govern, you have to make policy, you have to predict, you have to go out on a limb and stake a position. I don't think I can afford to say, well, I cannot imagine the future. I know we will be wrong. 99% of the time it's wrong. And by the way, no consultant can tell you what it's going to look like. For someone who was in the telecom industry for many years, I remember working in Morocco, the consultants came and told them, you're going to have 30,000 mobile users in '99 within 5 years. Well, within 1 year, they had 1 million, and then they had 15 and whatever million. They never get it right. That's the nature of technology, especially with a technology as rapidly advancing as artificial intelligence. You have today, it took 23 years for the second fastest growing technology, mobile, 23 years to reach 100 million. ChatGPT alone reached 100 million in 2 months. So you just have to throw out all the traditional ways of predicting the future. But if I were to take a wager, I would say that my successor will be sitting in the Council of Ministers with at least half the portfolios run by artificial intelligence.
But would success look like? That would be...
That's success, where much of the bureaucracy, much of these decisions will be data-driven. And when you say they're data-driven, whether there is there's a human being that is translating what the data says, or an AI agent, the end result is the same. And I'm not kidding that we will be relying, whether it's healthcare policy or fiscal policy and so on, these answers will come from artificial intelligence and with the algorithms that will be proposed. It's not that we're going to be redundant. We're not going to be made redundant. Politicians will be the first to find a way to stay relevant, to recycle themselves. However, we have to contend with the technology. Success for Lebanon looks like the following. In addition to this vision, it's a vision where rather than continuing with a brain drain that we've had for decades, we will see a brain gain where many of the Lebanese in the diaspora will contribute through investment or mentorship in the tech industry, because we have an incredibly vibrant diaspora in the tech industry. So success looks like, as I mentioned, 80%, 90% even of our services, government services, cloud-based. Success looks like a government that is actually delivering services to people seamlessly. And yes, today you mentioned you can do almost anything except get married. In the UAE today, you can actually get married on the app. And that's something that they just launched not too long ago. And so that's not the future. This is today. This is today. So that's what success looks like for Lebanon, where so much of what you do, what you suffer in terms of transactions and the government not being responsive with its services, these things will be resolved. The pain points that I started with will have been addressed. That to me is success.
Mr. Pirkakis.
I'm laughing because I was thinking hopefully get married on the app and not with the app.
I don't know about you, but I said with the app, on the app.
Having said this, I mean, my KPI would not be Greek. It would be European. And it would be European in the following sense. We need to create not 27 efficient markets in Europe, but one efficient single market. So in this regard, we need to go Estonia throughout Europe, digitize all the public services, interoperate all the public services of Europe between them. So you can work 3 years in one place and 4 years in another place. The pension systems don't digitally interact with each other. We started doing that during COVID-19 and vaccinations. We created a big interoperability platform for COVID. But we need to achieve this. This will be AI-driven. But at the end of the day, the answer needs to be citizen-centric. So you need to have full delivery of digital services throughout the European Union in this regard. And in parallel, because we should speak about technological innovation as well, not only governmental innovation. There are areas where we are at the technological frontier right now. There are areas where we were and we missed the opportunity. I'm thinking of 5G, where specific technological players in Europe had the advantage in 2020. And instead of leveraging that advantage, we decided to stay fragmented and have 27 different telecom markets with 27 different regulators instead of creating an ecosystem around our technological innovators. So we need more technological innovators. We need a savings and investment union that funds those players, those startups, grows them in Europe, because at some point right now you will need an American investment bank to further grow, which is not bad, but ideally we should have our own capacities in Europe to be able to fund them and grow them. So if you do all of those things at once, create digital states, a digital union, and you have the funding mechanisms and one single savings and investment union in parallel, and connect this with the education system in every single European country, then we will have achieved something which has been, something that we have been discussing for quite some time, which has been considered the low-hanging fruit, but which hasn't been delivered for quite some time, and it's a pity. The opportunity cost is huge.
Yeah, well, thank you all for sharing your insights. I mean, clearly the experiences of Greece, of Estonia, of Lebanon show that leadership, creativity, public trust are as essential as the technology itself, whether it's digital or AI or what have you. And the future is also arriving fast. I think that's sort of a message that we've heard throughout. But today's panel reminds us that it still rests on governments to make the right choices. And you have to seize it's carpe diem. You have to seize the opportunities. It's not just going to happen by itself, right? It's not just, these things are not just going to translate into prosperity and better service delivery and greater trust among the citizenry by itself, right? And so thank you, ministers. Thank you all for being here. A big round of applause for everyone. And thanks to all of you for attending.